It is the 80th anniversary of the opening of the Battle of the Bulge and the extraordinary nature of that battle, which I believe there were 200,000 American casualties. That doesn't include the Brits that were on the shoulder to the left, on the left flank, or the Germans. It was the last big offensive on the Western Front where Germany, I think it was 40 divisions, through the Ardennes, the forest. Everyone says the Ardennes like they've been there. I've never been there. The Ardennes is a giant forest. It's like the size of Luxembourg. And you're not supposed to be able to get through it, except the Germans have come through it 3 times. World War I, World War II, and then the Battle of the Bulge, when everyone assumed they were going backward. There is perhaps the best scene in Patton involves the relief of the 101st Airborne and others that are stranded in the Ardennes. And I'll play that for you just to remind you. This is, of course, George C. Scott as Patton as the Allied generals gather. Montgomery, Patton, Omar Bradley, Ike's not in the room, to discuss what to do because nobody saw this right hook coming. Let's play that audio.
What about you, George? I can attack with 3 divisions in 48 hours.
Well, I'd give myself some leeway if I were you.
Ike, what's a realistic estimate, George? You're in the middle of a fight now, and it's over 100 miles to Bastogne.
My staff's already working out the details.
Well, frankly, I don't see how it's possible. Not in this kind of weather.
I should have thought you would want to fall back and regroup.
Not me, Freddie. I don't like to pay for the same real estate twice.
But what about your men? You can't pull them out of the line and cart them off 100 miles and then expect them to attack without rest.
I train these men, Arthur. They'll do what I tell them to do.
Perhaps we hadn't realized that you were quite so popular with your troops, General.
I'm not. They'll do it because they're good soldiers. And because they realize, as I do, that we can still lose this war.
It is one of the great scenes. That last night was Montgomery, who didn't get along with Patton. And then there follows, and I can't show it to you, I don't want to strike on YouTube. There follows a sequence that is intended to convey the difficulty of the march from where the Third Army was to Bastogne and the relief of Bastogne. And it's a fabulous bit of a fabulous movie. Some people like it too much. I like it the right amount. I watch it maybe every 10 years. But since it's the 80th anniversary, I might get to that. Look, there's not a lot of news, but there's one big story. And I cannot wait to get to the big story. And I'm not talking about the drones. Vic Matus is coming along at the bottom of the first hour. He's from New Jersey, so that means he'll know about the drones, right? Everybody in New Jersey should know about the drones. Everybody with family in New Jersey been talking. I don't know anything about the drones. I told Dwayne it was coming to this. Years ago, I warned him. I said, we do not want the commercial use of drones. And no, Dwayne wasn't having any of it. Back in the afternoon days, where we're returning to on January 13. Back in the afternoon days, when Dwayne would come to work, he would occasionally argue for drones. Oh, you're there. What's the occasion? Oh, you expect there to be a Christmas party today. There's not going to be a Christmas party. I don't believe in Christmas parties. And besides, myphdweightloss.com did not send me the guidance for how to have a Christmas party made out of Slim Jims.
Okay. Fine.
864
644
1900. That's
864
644
1900.
This is a radio show. You're supposed to say something.
I'm trying to come up with some kind of, making, Slim Jims into Lincoln Logs and building something.
Well, that's not working. I just want people to know that if you're having trouble, for example, the Fetching Mrs. Hewitt is not here. She's on vomit patrol. And anyone who knows what this means, when you have a family with 4 children, 12 and under,
that means one of them,
they all get
sick.
The flu at the same time.
Right.
So the bat phone rang in the cave on Friday night for the Fetching Mrs. Hewitt to drive 4 hours to go assist my daughter because my son-in-law is deployed. And of course she did it. So she's on vomit patrol. So I've got nothing to do.
Well, which also means that basically every pizza delivery guy in the Beltway is now on call.
Oh no! I've just been I've been eating my way through the supply of Christmas cookies in the house.
That should be done by now.
It is.
Okay,
the tin
so
went empty
now
last night.
we're into calling pizza delivery.
Moreover, I went to the back of the cabinets where she normally, hides stuff. I found everything. I like a 6-year-old on the hunt for Christmas presents. I found it all. It's all gone. I removed the hazard from the house.
Okay. No, you consumed the hazard from the house.
MyPhDweightloss.com had nothing on me because I did that because I had been Ohio shamed on Friday. Do you even know what Ohio shaming is?
No, I don't. I know what Ohio shaming is if you're into Ohio sports. But I don't know what you're talking
This
about.
is just generic Ohio shaming. I was at an event with my friend Urban Meyer on Friday, and Coach comes over to me and says, "Love that relief factor bit that you do. Did you run today?" I said, "No." He said, "What?" I said, "It was too cold." And Urban Meyer chewed me out for letting I did 10 on Saturday and 7 on Sunday. I was Ohio shamed. He looked at me like, "What?" And then he followed it up.
You're
with,
right. You claim to be from Northeast Ohio,
Yeah.
and you're worried about the cold.
He said, "We had 50 inches of snow in Ashtabula over the weekend." I said, "I know that. That's why I don't live in Northeastern Ohio anymore." He said, "You really let the cold..." And so I was Ohio shamed by Urban Meyer. So I had to do 10 on Saturday and 7 on Monday. So I'm going to do my relieffactor.com right now and mix it in with myPhDweightloss.com. But even though I ate every edible Christmas cookie in the house,
Yes.
I lost weight this weekend.
Okay. Is that all you ate?
Yes.
Okay. That's
Yes.
not the best way to do things.
It's not going to end up on any pyramid of foods anywhere.
No, it's not.
No, but it was great.
You made
Now,
RFK Jr. cry.
I did. MyPhDweightloss.com, 864
644.
1900. If you don't want to do what I did, 17 miles in 2 days, and you'd rather just have a normal diet, don't eat every Christmas cookie in the house and go to myPhDweightloss.com. Now, I'm going to add to that, since you're here. I know you must be leaving soon. Have you ever read Jan Genera's book, Turning Small Talk into Big Talk?
Last year, yeah,
Okay. Would you agree it is a perfect stocking stuffer,
of course.
especially for people who don't know how to hold a conversation?
Oh, very much so.
This is the perfect book. You go to jansbooks.com, or if you can remember, go to Amazon and look up Jan Genera or Turning Small Talk into Big Talk. This is the book that you turn someone's skill set around with. You can teach them how to actually be enjoyable to be around by teaching them how to have a conversation without telling them you're really dull and you don't know how to talk to people. Just give them this book and say, "But this is the latest hit." Jan Genera's book on conversation, Turning Small Talk into Big Talk. Go to jansbooks.com. Also, Generally, you have been up to the Wild Adventure, twa.us.
I have.
You have. What would you say to mom or dad or brother or friend who's thinking about going on the Young Guns at twa.us? That's for 21 to 35-year-olds.
It is a necessary rite of passage for any American male
To go fly fishing?
to go fly fishing for a week and have real conversations and figure out the important stuff in life. It is that important.
Well, what happened to you? I thought you went on it.
I did.
Well, you still don't show up for work on it. I really don't know. We're going to have to send you back. twa.us, wonderful Christmas present. Adam, do we have the mom calling in? A mom called in one time. Let's play that. I want to talk to Colleen in Pittsburgh. Hey, Colleen, how are you?
I'm great, Hugh. How are you?
I'm great.
Hey, I was calling to thank you. My son got home from the Wild Adventure last night at midnight, and he's 22 and has had a rough couple years with COVID and everything, and starting college this weekend, and he said it was the best week of his life. And
Oh, wow.
And he got closer to the Lord, and as a parent and mom, I just want to thank you for, I learned about it on your show. And
An unsolicited testimonial is the best kind of testimonial. Go to twa.us and send someone there. Also, I'll let you know, the inauguration is 35 days away. You probably don't have tickets. But if you want to enter a contest to get a ticket, not only 2 tickets, plus travel, plus tickets to inaugural ball, text the name Trump to 94878. That's TRUMP to 94878. Salem is making that possible, a chance to win a once-in-a-lifetime trip to a presidential inauguration. Great weather guaranteed. Not. But it will be great fun. They are always there. The bleachers are always wonderful. Great inaugural parade for Donald Trump returning to the White House from which he departed 4 years ago. It is the week you go crazy, right? You're just so far behind. There is some news, and there's one story. I've been waiting for the story because I got to talk to Vic Matus about it after we do the drones. And the story is that ABC News and George Stephanopoulos settled with Donald Trump and paid him $15 million to his presidential library. Now, that would be bigger than the biggest gift ever yet received by the Nixon Library, though one is in the offing that might be larger. But the Nixon Foundation, yeah, maybe defame me, George, so that I can get, but I am so stunned by that. I've been teaching New York Times v. Sullivan since I started teaching in 1996. In fact, I taught it in 1995 because I taught torts for 1 year before we got to con law. And New York Times v. Sullivan is the dispositive case against the tort of defamation. Tort means injury. Defamation means to your reputation, damage to your reputation. There's a long line of common law cases about when you defame someone, it is libelous to destroy someone's reputation. And in a classic tort, you have to have a duty, you must breach it, there must be an injury, and then you have to calculate damages. And so it's very hard to win a tort case. I've never once worried about it. I've been on the air for 35 years, and 34 years. And the fact that New York Times v. Sullivan came down in 1964 has been the umbrella over my yammering on air, on radio, and on television. If you're watching on the Salem News Channel, you can see me. If you're listening to me in your car, defamation is when you speak falsely or with reckless disregard for the truth, and you have actual malice towards someone, and they are a public figure. You can recover. All the other stuff doesn't matter. You can get sued if you're a private person. You can sue and be sued for defamation for what you say about people if it's false and if it injures them. And truth is a defense. There are lots of rules about it. Here's one rule. Nobody wins lawsuits if they are a public person or an elected official. And there are 3 categories. There are elected officials, public people, and formerly public people. I guess there are 4 categories. And just your ordinary Joe. Your ordinary Joe gets to bring a defamation suit when someone has said something wrong about them, false, that injures their reputation, that causes them damage. They refuse to apologize. And that's not true if you're a public person. You're a public official. You can't defame me. Doesn't matter what you say. It's very hard to defame a public person. Donald Trump is the most public person in America. So when he brought his lawsuit against ABC and George Stephanopoulos, which I'll talk about with Vic after the break, for defamation, and they settled for $15 million, I said, what in the world was in the discovery? I know what George said. He said 10 times falsely that Donald Trump had been convicted of rape. Let's play a little bit of that clip. It's a very old clip. Nancy Mace talking with George Stephanopoulos sometime in the past. Let's play clip number 2.
I still get judged for it today.
I'm asking you a very simple question.
And I answered it. You're shaming me for my political choices.
I'm asking you a question about why you endorse someone who's been found liable for rape.
It was not a criminal court. This was a civil court. It was a civil court. And by the way, she joked about the judgment and what she was going to do with all that money, and I find that offensive.
I'm asking you about the man
But as a rape victim who's been shamed for years now because of her rape, you're trying to shame me again by asking me this political question.
You've repeated that again.
I think it's offensive. As a woman, I find it offensive. For my political choices, I've endorsed the man that I believe is best for our country. It's not Joe Biden. And you looked at the dueling rallies yesterday in Georgia. Laken Riley's family was with Donald Trump. They weren't with Joe Biden. The same guy yesterday that apologized for calling her killer an illegal, who wasn't illegal. And here you are trying to shame a rape victim. I find it disgusting.
I mean, you keep saying I'm shaming you.
You are. The question, it is.
How is the question asking you about a presidential candidate who's
You're asking a rape victim.
And there's no question about that. And you've courageously talked about that.
Because I've been raped. I think that's disgusting.
No, I'm questioning your political choices because you're supporting
me. You're
someone who's been found liable for rape. Actually, I'm not trying to.
You are. That's exactly.
You're not
what
answering
you're
the
doing.
question.
I think it's disgusting.
It is said that George asserts Donald Trump was liable for rape 10 times. He was not. Of course, he wasn't. And the Jean Carroll case is bizarre, and I don't believe it will hold up in any event, but it doesn't conclude that Donald Trump is guilty of rape. And so I am here to tell you that ABC really must be afraid. Joined by the one and only Vic Matus. He is the co-host of Getting Hammered. He is the Washington Free Beacon weekend editor. He is also from New Jersey. And Vic, good morning to you. I am a little disappointed in the most recent Getting Hammered for two reasons. Do you want to hear them?
Yeah, of course I do. Of course I do, Hugh.
All right. Number one, you and Mary Catherine were insufficiently jihad-like in the rise of the espresso deliverers in the hotel room. All right. I hate them. I can't make them work. I think they're intended to save money, and so that the staff, because no one can use them, right? Only Guy Benson likes those things, as far as I know. Do you like those things?
No, I never use coffee machines in hotel rooms in general, Hugh. I'd rather go downstairs for the free coffee sometimes. A friend of mine who used to work for the FBI actually said those old coffee machines that you found in lots of hotel and motel rooms were often had dual use purposes. One is to make coffee. The other one was to cook meth. And so I think they probably have the same difficulty making that with the espresso machines.
No, Vic, my number one rule when it comes to hotels is never stay with a hotel that opens to the parking lot. The door of your room cannot open to a parking lot, nor can it be accessible from the street. So that would mostly eliminate that problem, I think. You obviously don't have that rule.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with that. Yeah, no, wherever I go, anyone will take me in, I'll go in. That's fine.
All right, so I want you to continue the jihad against every hotel chain that won't put Mr. Coffee, the old Mr. Coffee, the ones we could work. Okay, my second thing has to do with you're holding out on us on the drones. Vic, you grew up in New Jersey, right?
I did.
What was your high school?
I grew up in Toms River. Yeah.
Okay. And the name of the high school?
Oh, yes. The name of the high school was Monsignor Donovan High School in Toms River, but it's now called Donovan Catholic. Still there.
All right. So now you're still widely connected because I hear you talking about your dad. And no doubt you know what's going on in New Jersey, but like everybody else in New Jersey, you're not telling us. What is going on with the drones, Vic?
Yeah, it's a Garden State secret, Hugh. We're sworn to secrecy. It's omerta, as you know, because we're from New Jersey. No, there's about, 5 or 6 different explanations for this. The latest one I saw was that it's, private companies that test for radiation leaks in the ground, and that's why there's sort of in various areas of the state. Unfortunately, New Jersey has problems like that, but that's just one explanation. The other one, of course, is the Biden administration's explanation, which is that, they're mostly planes and there's nothing to worry about. And we actually don't know the ones that might not be planes. We don't know what they are. But again, there's nothing to worry about. The only problem with that explanation, of course, is that you have other members of the government, mainly local leaders, elected officials, members of Congress. And I'm not just talking about Republicans. I'm talking about Democrats, Josh Gottheimer, Andy Kim, along with Jeff Van Drew and Chris Smith, who are the Republicans, saying, we don't know. We've seen them for ourselves. They're not planes, they believe, and we want answers. And even the U.S. Coast Guard says that they'd been tailed by drones. So, this is a real problem. It could be China. It could be Iran. I don't think it's Russia. At this point, Hugh, the best thing to hope for is that it's aliens, because at least it's like a 50-50 shot either that they're friendly or they're an enemy, because the other ones are not friendly.
But when you called home this weekend, I'm assuming you called your dad this weekend, Did you?
Yeah, of course. Yes, I.
Okay,
I-
okay,
no,
just
I called him
checking.
about it.
I'm like your conscience, Vic. Did he have
Thank
anything
you,
to
yeah.
say about the
Every other
drones?
day.
He's on the ground. Does he have
Yes,
an
no,
opinion on the
no.
drones?
My father has not seen any drones. That said, friends of mine have said that they've seen them. They have some video of it. They just say it's weird. They called it weird crap, but they didn't say crap because it's New Jersey, but it's a family show, so I'll leave it at that. They're not sure what to make of it. I don't think it's some sort of a hysteria where people are suddenly convinced that air traffic and manned aircraft are suddenly just, aliens or machines. No, I think they are really seeing an uptick in activity by drones. And that is really something to be concerned about, particularly if Jeff Van Drew is correct that there's some sort of an Iranian connection, according to his sources, or that it's coming from somewhere overseas.
Well, Congressman Van Drew used the unfortunate turn of phrase, a mothership. And therefore, that casts you into sci-fi realm and all sorts of fantasy and mystery novels, and we don't want to go there. I just want to, does anyone have like a local theory that it's kids?
No, it would no. I mean, if it's some sort of organization, some amateur group that gets together and say, let's light it up. I mean, that's one thing. But according to some of these, eyewitnesses, they're pretty large drones that are not accessible to private citizens, or drones that are large enough that they're made in China. And again, that we don't use if they're supposedly the size of the hood of a car or a car, we wouldn't have that. That wouldn't be up to us. It would be military. So no, there are a variety of theories, but again, no answers. I really do think that the United States government probably has a few good leads and doesn't want them these adversaries to know that they're onto them, and so that's why they're trying to keep mum about it.
All
I
right,
mean,
let
maybe
me,
it's
let
like
me, I'm skeptical.
enigma.
I still think New Jersey people know things that other people don't know. Let me turn to your weekend edition of the Free Beacon. You reviewed or had someone review Christine Rosen's book, The Extinction of Experience, which I loved, read, and recommended to everyone. What did your reviewer think of it?
Oh yes, Tal Fortgang, who's a wonderful writer, and he's written for commentary, and he is now a regular contributor to the Weekend Beacon. He loved it because there is a real sort of awareness that we need to dial back to have the lived experience, and we've lost that. And I don't know if we can recover it. And this has been going on for some time. Obviously, you go back to when people had mini camcorders, and suddenly, you had to tape your child's, at on stage, tap recital or whatever it was. And suddenly now, of course, with phones, everything is being doc. Every experience, you're on vacation, you're at the Grand Canyon, you're at the beach, you're seeing your, kid perform somewhere. You're holding up that camera and recording it and watching it through the lens of that camera, the screen. There's something that's missing from that. Hugh, and I feel that too, and I've done that on a few occasions, and I love watching the video. It's true, but at the same time, there's something to be said to be living in the moment, and a lot of people are losing that, particularly younger people and younger generations. Our attention spans, our ability to learn, the impact that it's having on school. It's a very serious problem, and we need to.
I'm very glad you guys reviewed it. I just hope everyone picks it up. Now, I want to close with the Christmas ritual at the Matus household. Do you unwrap gifts the night before or only on Christmas morning?
Okay. When I was growing up, we had one or two gifts we were allowed to open up on Christmas Eve, and then everything else is on Christmas Day. We also randomly got gifts when I was growing up in stockings during Christmas, during December. We would find a random gift in the hanging there, in the thing. But nowadays, in our family here, the Matus house here, maybe one gift, but otherwise we all open it up on Christmas
And are
morning.
you a midnight mass family? Because the fetching Mrs. Hewitt married me despite the fact that she came to the Hewitt Manse in Warren, Ohio, and we all trooped out to midnight mass when it was 10 degrees below zero, and she thought we were out of our minds. Do you do midnight mass?
No, I might have done it once or twice. That's some hard work. That's a great thing for you to do, Hugh. It's late, and we do slightly earlier. We do the 5 p.m. Saturday Mass. I don't know if that counts. I know you might think that's a sin, but
No, that
the thing is,
counts.
it counts.
That counts.
Yeah,
That counts.
I just hate the crowds. You have to show up at least 30 minutes, and all these people that never go during the other rest of the year, maybe they go during Easter, and it drives me nuts. But I know we're supposed to be happy and be thankful that they're showing up at all, and hopefully they'll
It's
come back.
also a
Following
giant
Sunday.
petri dish of first graders coughing, hacking, and sneezing on you. Every
Yeah, don't sit
single
in the back.
matinee performance of the Christmas pageant, whether in a religious service or standalone,
Yeah.
is in fact a petri dish. And I thought maybe one of the lingering restrictions from COVID would have been a shutdown of said pageants, but apparently they're back. Have you been to one yet?
No, they're back and they're better than ever. No, we go to a school, a church that's connected to a school. So if you go to a certain time for that mass, you'll get the full production, and it's lengthy, but it's sweet.
It's lengthy, but you got to go, and it's not like Love Actually. It's not lobsters. There are shepherds and donkeys and angels and things like that. Vic Matus, last question, very quickly. You said you were done with your Christmas shopping?
Yeah, pretty much done. Have they
Turn in
arrived?
your
I don't
man
know.
card. Turn in your
I'm not
man
getting out
card.
there. No. I'm going to be focused on the eggnog this week. You just wait for our next episode of Getting Hammered later this week.
All right, I'm looking forward to that. Eggnog. Thank you, Vic Matus. Everything available at Free Beacon. Follow Vic at Victorina Matus. And go get Getting Hammered. They need to go back and get the espresso rooms out of the hotel. Crazy week. It's the week where you're trying to get everything done and for Christmas. Salena Zito, of course, joins us. Everything Salena Zito can be found at salenazito.com. And you can follow her on X at Zito. Salena, good week before Christmas. Where's all the cookies? I don't see any cookies in that kitchen.
There's a stack of them to my left. And we're making a lot more today.
When did the 7 fishes show up?
So, the Feast of the Seven Fish is an Italian tradition that have been adopted by a lot of people, including J.D. Vance, who, when he became Catholic, called me and said, "So, how do I get in on this?" The Seven Fish Feast is traditionally held on Christmas Eve. We hold it on December 23rd because that's my father's birthday. And I do it at my house. You have to make a meal, 7 different meals with fish incorporated into it. And I also make homemade pasta, sauce, meatballs, braciole, stuffed hot peppers, and eggplant.
Yeah, I'm not a big fish guy. Does Mrs. Paul's fish sticks show up?
No, they do not show up.
I had a great mom. She was a wonderful nurse. Couldn't cook worth a doggone. And so therefore, Mrs. Paul's fish sticks for my life for every Friday forever. So I'm wondering, Salena, is it an expectation on you? Are you supposed to deliver this every year?
Oh yeah, this is my 35th year doing it. My grandmother died in the late 70s, and I took over probably 4 years later. When I was like 21 years old.
This is the key question. Who's the designated survivor of 7 Fish Christmas? If you go the way of the angels, who takes over?
My daughter will. Definitely.
Oh, she will? Have you talked to her about this?
Oh yeah, she lives a quarter mile away from me, and her and my grandchildren are here making it with me for like 3 days. So,
all right, very good.
Yeah,
now, my next question is much more serious. Wright Pat, where my uncle Hank Roll worked for 40 years. Wright Pat Air Force Base is not too far from you. I'm wondering if you can jaunt down there to get a look at the drones that have shut down Wright Pat. Because Wright Patterson. I mean, Vic Matus didn't know anything about the drones, and they're everywhere. Now they've shut down Wright Pat. So what do you know?
Yeah. So I've been there. I drive past there every year when every couple times a year when I drive across the country. That is incredible. I mean, that's like the middle of America, right? That is not a coastal city. It's not on the coast. It's not near the ocean. It's dead center in the middle of the country. And that is just, I mean, all of it is incredibly disturbing. What is most disturbing is whatever happens in a vacuum of information, and there's repeated vacuum of information, you get fear because you're not having any idea of what's happening. So this is causing, I mean, it's also causing some very humorous posts, but it's causing fear, and it's just sort of ridiculous that our own government won't calm that fear. At
But
this
Salena, they
point,
sent Secretary Mayorkas out. Isn't Secretary Mayorkas good enough to like assure everyone that everything is fine with the drones?
oh, you mean the same guy who said that there's no crisis at the border? Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think that's coming from that guy. He's not going to reassure anybody of anything. It's sort of like sending Pete Buttigieg to East Palestine, walking around in, impeccable clothing and not getting dirty. And, it's just
But by
this
the way,
administration
Pete
has been bad.
Buttigieg, who's called Buttigieg by the guys over at Ruthless, apparently has declared that he's a Michigan resident now and is going to run for governor in Michigan. Have you heard that?
Yeah, I have heard that. Especially all my buddies up there that run Republican politics up in Michigan, and they're like, "Okay, bring it on," because
Who's going to
the
tell him that you don't get to move to a Midwestern state and declare? It's not like California where everyone moves to, or Texas, or Florida, or even Virginia. You just don't get to plant a flag in the Midwest and say that you're there, that you're from there. And I mean, we take these things pretty seriously, right?
oh yeah, we take them very very seriously, and it's not as though he has kept his Midwestern roots. Look, I covered Pete Buttigieg when he was the mayor of in Indiana, and he ran for the DNC chair. He was a very different Pete Buttigieg, and so I think that he thinks he can go back to that, and based on his behavior and elitism in this administration, they're not going to be buying what he's putting down.
No, I think that is the funniest, how do we call it, trial balloon to be floated in a long time. Pete Buttigieg being a Michigander. Not true, not going to work, wouldn't be prudent. Salena, just drive on down to Wright Pat and look around for us, would you please? You're not doing anything this time of the year. You're completely, there's nothing going on. Go follow her at ZitoSalena.com, or follow her on X at Zito Salena, or go to SalenaZito.com. I messed that up. Good Monday to you. I know some of you are struggling, thinking, oh, how am I going to go to work this week and next week? We are 10 days away from Christmas. I cannot possibly get ready. Go to work. You'll go to your Christmas parties today. I've now completed all of our Christmas parties except our Christmas Eve dinner for family in the region, and that's it. I'm very happy about that. I've done no Christmas shopping, though. I want to get to the story of the weekend. There's a lot of news. The mystery drones continue. We've got unrest in China. We got Russia pulling out of Syria. We have a senior Hamas official saying that the deal is closer than ever before, and Prime Minister Netanyahu discussed with President-elect Trump getting the hostages out. Israel has said, see ya, Ireland. They're closing their embassy because of anti-Semitism in Ireland. The Wall Street Journal is reporting the feds can't decide on what to do about interest rates. There is quite a lot on the collapse of ratings at MSNBC and CNN, and there's many other stories. The least interesting of the stories that I pull, Apple plans thinner foldable iPhone to revive growth. So I'm glad I don't own Apple. I rebought my Palantir after I had the CTO of Palantir on. When he booked, I sold it. When he left, I bought it back because I do believe in Palantir. But I am not at all interested in Apple because Apple faces the very difficult process of getting out of China. And you're going to have to get out of China if you're an American company. You're not going to be able to produce in China for much longer. No one's going to buy your stuff. They're going to assume that, like Israeli pagers, Chinese phones are not really just a phone. Now, I want to get to the one big story of the weekend. I'm watching the Army-Navy game, and I get a news bulletin that ABC News and George Stephanopoulos have settled and apologized to Donald Trump. Settled a lawsuit that Donald Trump brought for defamation against ABC and George Stephanopoulos. And I just stopped right then and said, this is extraordinary, because you don't settle defamation suits by public officials or public figures. In the law of tort, it's possible to defame someone. You say a wrongful thing, something that's not true, that injures the reputation of another person, and you publish it, meaning you make it available to people with whom you don't have a privileged relationship, like your spouse or your confessor or your lawyer. You make a non-privileged statement that is false, that damages the reputation of another individual, and that individual can sue you for defamation. That individual will win if you do not have truth as a defense and if, in fact, you injured them. The most difficult thing about a defamation case is, really, what's the damages? I mean, you can't defame me. You can't defame Dwayne. I mean, you could if you worked really hard. You could defame a public figure. You'd have to knowingly repeat a malicious lie that injures their reputation with actual malice. So when I saw this, I was stunned. And I went back and I looked at the clip that was at issue. And it's a few minutes interview with Nancy Mace earlier this year where George repeats repeatedly, and I say George only because I've been introduced to him a half dozen times, been on his show a few times. He is good friends with good friends of mine. Never had a unprofessional minute with George. But I thought in this interview with Nancy Mace, when he kept saying, how can a presidential nominee who's been found liable for rape, and he wasn't. Donald Trump was not found liable for rape, and therefore he repeated it again and again and again. Well, I'm not going to replay the clip. I played it in hour number one. The question becomes, really? That's enough to settle a defamation suit? So what did George know? What was his state of mind? Because if George really believed that Donald Trump was actually guilty of rape and had actually been found liable of rape, then he would not have settled, and ABC would not have settled the lawsuit. When you have defamed someone, you actually have malice towards that individual if it's a public official. Now, an official or a public figure is a category of people who put themselves knowingly into the arena of public opinion. And people say bad things about you all the time. That's why I say never read the comment section on anyone's column, because they're usually written by people who've had just a couple of pops too many or aren't really shuffling with a full deck. Left, right, center, doesn't matter. Most commenters, I don't even know why they're doing it. Nobody reads the comments. But they do it anyway, and they amuse each other, and it's a hive. But around George, there are lots of lawyers. ABC is well lawyered. I think they are still a subsidiary of Disney. I don't follow the comings and goings of but Disney, I actually represented Disney, one of my law firms. I'm retired now, and Disney hires good lawyers. And so they had the lawyers involved, and the lawyers told Disney, we're going to settle this. And Trump made an offer of settlement, and the offer of settlement was within policy limits. I read some interesting legal takes on this online yesterday because it's so astonishing that ABC did this. Now, the headline this morning is that liberals unload on ABC settlement with Trump, defend George Stephanopoulos, quote, knee bent, ring kissed. ABC News agreed to settle on Saturday and to pay a Trump charity, the presidential foundation that will be building the library for Trump somewhere, $15 million. Then, today on Fox News is the second story. George Stephanopoulos does not mention the ABC News settlement with Trump's defamation lawsuit on his Sunday show. And then, the Lindsay Cornick story at Fox News adds, the ABC News anchor also deleted his X account. That is a rout. That is a complete and utter throwdown. I have no defense. What do you think were in George's emails? Because the discovery was supposed to begin this week, and Donald Trump was going to sit for a deposition, and George Stephanopoulos was going to sit for a deposition. And rather than allow George to sit for a deposition, ABC and its insurance company stroked a check for $15 million. How bad must it be? Now, I am not a litigator. I did advise on a couple of defamation suits. People are always eager in their mind to bring them. They can't get away with that. I'm going to sue them. I always tell my clients, or I used to, I don't have any clients anymore, other than family members who need help on reading a contract. No, I told my old clients, a bad settlement is better than a good lawsuit, number one. Number two, a lie is halfway around the world before truth gets its boots on. That's a Mark Twain quote, and it's true. You can't, and if you touch a libel, it spreads. So if someone says something bad about you and it's not true, pay no attention to it. Don't go on the air and repeat it. Don't point to it. Don't touch it. Don't spread it, because if you pay attention to a libel, it gets picked up. So just leave it alone. And that's always tough advice. Nobody wants that advice. But then you bring the hammer, and you can't win. Right? You cannot win a defamation suit. Not if you're a public figure. Not if you willingly walk into the arena where everyone throws food at the wall. Are you out of your mind? You're not going to win this lawsuit. Why would you spend this much money? Now, there are some torts like invasion of privacy, which are easier to prove. And business slander, business defamation is a little bit easier to prove. But defamation of Donald Trump, this is the Mount Everest of tort claims. And ABC folded. I don't know if George wanted to fold. Deleting the X account tells me he didn't want to fold, but he folded, which means they could not defend. They were not going to try and defend George's statements and his accusations. That, by the way, should set off a scramble among the Trump legal team for everyone who said anything remotely like what George said. I think it's the first of many lawsuits, not the end of the only one. That's the story of the weekend. I'll bring you more news and headlines when we come back. Don't go anywhere, America. Bethany Mandel's going to update us on whether or not Israel's going to strike at Iran, which she's hearing. And we got Geraghty the Indispensable coming up. And the best resume I have ever seen came from the Solicitor General of Ohio, Elliot Dazer. And he was just to get ready for an interview, but I still must say, it's amazing. It's 41 degrees inside the Beltway this morning. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Good holiday season to you. I am celebrating our Merry Christmas, whatever your faith tradition is. I hope you enjoy the end of the year holidays. Everybody is festive. If you watched the Army-Navy game and you saw President-elect Trump in the box with Elon Musk and incoming Senate Majority Leader John Thune and Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, and I believe National Security Advisor Mike Waltz was in the box. I think I saw Urban Musk and Elon. They were having a grand old time. And I've got a column that I worked a lot on the weekend on, because I'm trying to figure out, why is Trump so much more popular today than he was 8 years ago? You know what his approval rating was 8 years ago? 40%. So he was 35 days away from the presidency in 2016, and he would take the oath of office in January 2017, and his approval rating was at 40%. It's at 55% right now. Why is that? And so I've been going back and forth. I'm working on it. columns are not just sit down and pound them out. You got to tease them out. And the question is, why? That's a big jump. Right? That's a 30%, almost 40% improvement in approval over 8 years. And it's not been an uneventful 8 years. You got all of Trump term 1. You got January 6th. You've got 4 years of Biden-Harris and Bidenomics. And all that goes in at the beginning of that stretch. Donald Trump is at 40% approval. At the end of that stretch, before he takes office, he's at 55% approval. So the question becomes, why? Why is that? I have my answers. I have my theory. But let me do a little business first. Our friend Rhett Rasmussen at besthotgrill.com wants you to remember not only the best grills in America at besthotgrill.com, the best fireball, the best fire log, the best of everything. And if you visit their website, you'll find the great Christmas present you've been looking for. And I'm telling you right now, if you've got a best client, you give them besthotgrill.com. It's American made. You can get the Rasmussen gas log as well. They may or may not need that. The fireballs, they may or may not need. They will love a hibachi. Whatever we call, whatever is the smallest best hot grill. I don't know if they call it a hibachi or not, but it's the same infrared technology that makes the best grilling in the world. And I want you to know, they will never not think of you at every single tailgate they ever go to. So your best Christmas bet is besthotgrill.com. Or you can give stock. All right, so let me go check on the stock market brought to you by our sponsors at AmericanFederal.com, AmFed Coin and Bullion at 800-221-7694, 800-221-7694. If you're going to buy gold for Christmas, you better get going because it's got to get shipped. You got to get your cash to Nick Grovich and his team at 800-221-7694 or go to AmericanFederal.com and say, I want to give quarter ounces, half ounces, ounces. I want to give a Krugerrand, an American Eagle, a Canadian Maple Leaf to my grandson or my granddaughter, and they can't spend it. I don't want a broken toy. I really want them to have something to invest and understand gold. Gold this morning cost $2,677 an ounce. You were wondering why did the jewelry go up so much? Well, it's because gold's at $2,677 an ounce. 2,600. Wow. So go to Nick Grovich if you want to. Generalissimo, you used to be in the jewelry business, weren't you? Like a million years ago?
I was for about 10, 12 years or so.
So how often did you have to mark or lower prices based on the cost of gold?
The cost of gold never really went down when we were in business. But yes, you would adjust the price of things based upon if it was off $50 or up $100 or something like that. Yeah.
So if somebody is going out to buy gold earrings or a gold necklace or a gold set of cufflinks, they better be prepared for sticker shock?
Yeah, because gold it's what, 27, something like that?
2677.
Yeah,
it's
expensive.
Call up. And jewelers notice this, and they pass it on. So by all means, call Nick if you want your own gold. 1-800-221-7694. Now the question becomes, are you dreading your Christmas office party this week? Some of you may have gotten it out of the way already, and some of you may have it tonight, or you may have it next week again, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. No matter how much you dread it, can you imagine having to do the Democratic National Committee holiday party? Obviously not going to be called the Christmas party, even though it's the Christmas party. They did it last night, and it was on C-SPAN. And this is, honestly, I don't know how they got anyone to come, but they did. Room was full. And our president, Joe Biden, addressed the crowd. Again, just imagine you've lost everything. You've been blown out, and you've been blown out after spending $1.5 billion. And you've got to go toast the infirm old guy and the loser. I mean, it's just a wonderful night. Everybody's going to have a blast, right? It's going to be like a wake without the tributes to the deceased. All right, the president kicks it off. with an extraordinary claim. Cut number 6.
We've run a campaign that's basically scandal-free. It's hard to do in American politics these days.
All right, so how many of you had scandal-free on your bingo card for Joe Biden talking about his 2024 experience? How many of you had scandal-free? Didn't know he'd come up with that. More of the president, cut number 18.
The one thing I've always believed about public service, and especially about the presidency, is the importance of asking yourself, have we left the country better shape than we found it? Today, I can say with every fiber of my being, with all my heart, the answer to that question is a resounding yes.
Now, I ask you, by any measure, is it a resounding yes? By any possible ruling stick. You get a ruler, you get a yardstick, you're going to measure. By what measure is America better off today than it was 4 years ago? The answer is there aren't any. Now, we had already discovered the vaccine. All right, so we already had the vaccine 4 years ago. COVID lockdowns were still in place, and the vaccine was beginning to roll out. But, of course, it was rolling out, and it became available to people as they turned 65, as soon as they turned 65 into emergency room. The crisis moment had been passed. The moment that Pfizer and Moderna came up with the mRNA vaccine. Johnson & Johnson wasn't very good, but the other ones worked, and the crisis was over. And so Joe Biden didn't do anything on that front except ignite inflation by burning up billions and billions of dollars and expending it on his pals and his buddies. So there's no measure. But they had to go on. More President Biden from the holiday party last night. The holiday party from hell, cut number 19.
I knew what I was doing to ask her to be my vice president. I knew her. I knew of her. I knew about her. I knew her record. I trusted her. She always served this country with purpose and integrity, and she always will. And you're not going anywhere, kid, because we're not going to let you go.
We're not going anywhere, kid. All right. The vice president answered the bell. She, too, got up and spoke to the Democrat holiday party. Cut number, I'm looking for the first one, 7.
As a result of your leadership and your support, the National Finance Committee held more than 700 events across the country and raised nearly $700 million. An historic achievement, which without a doubt made our campaign stronger.
I want you to know it is not a historic achievement unless you win. Anyone can collect a large amount of money from the Democrat machine, about which some interesting questions have been raised by Speaker Johnson as to the source of some of the money from overseas, which we'll get to the bottom of. But you can't raise that much money and then tell everyone in the room, feel good. We blew it, but feel good. Let's go down to cut number 20. More Vice President Harris at the holiday party for the DNC last night.
Our spirit is not defeated. We are not defeated. Let's be clear about that. We are strong. We are clear about why we are in this. And because you're here right now, I say, again, thank you, because not only are you clear about all of that, you're willing to put in the hard work. And that work must continue. We cannot let any circumstance or situation or individual ever take away our power to know why we do what we do and our ability to then get that work done. And especially because we know what we stand for, and that's why we know what to fight for. We here believe in the promise of America.
Don't ever change, Vice President Harris. Don't. I'm going to play that again. That is that's like a 10 on the scale of the Olympic judges on the diving board of the gymnastic routine. It's almost too concentrated Kamala. My podcast is highly concentrated, Hugh. This is too concentrated Kamala. This is too on the nose, But it's a holiday party, so she saved her best stuff for the holiday party. Let's play that again, cut number 20.
Our spirit is not defeated. We are not defeated. Let's be clear about that. We are strong. We are clear about why we are in this. And because you're here right now, I say, again, thank you, because not only are you clear about all of that, you're willing to put in the hard work. And that work must continue. We cannot let any circumstance or situation or individual ever take away our power to know why we do what we do and our ability to then get that work done. And especially because we know what we stand for, and that's why we know what to fight for.
So what do you think people are thinking about in the audience when they hear this? Well, I mean, really, they're sitting there and they wrote 10,000, 100,000, $250,000, $1 million check. This is the DNC donors' holiday party. It's a grim occasion. It's like going to the guillotine. And they get together, and the vice president rattles off that long string of inane phrases that reminds everyone why she is absolutely a catastrophic candidate. And there's no reality in it. And yeah, I don't know what people expect going to the DNC holiday party. Some years it's just good manners to cancel. Like say, everybody's got the flu and we couldn't come. Because I got to tell you, the reality is Van Jones and Chris Salena. Now, Chris is a longtime friend of mine, and Van Jones and I have done some work before. They're usually wrong about everything, and they're lefties, but that's fine. They're just good lefties. Van Jones sat down with Chris Salena to do Chris's podcast. And they got to this segment, which I wish they had played at the DNC holiday party last night. This would have been more interesting than the president and the vice president. Cut number 17.
How the hell did Donald Trump figure out the mainstream media is the fringe and the fringe is now the mainstream? How the hell did Donald Trump figure out? I mean, Joe Rogan is obvious, right? Like, we knew the guy had a big audience. It's not like we were like stunned, but like, how the hell was he, the 78-year-old guy who doesn't even have a computer and still like writes handwritten notes? How did he become the guy who cracked the code on, to your point, running a cultural, I don't even want to say campaign, running
it was a movement. Look,
heading a cultural movement versus a campaign.
Every one of your people knows Elon. Listen. So everybody keeps, the problem is you have a framework in your mind that, how can Donald Trump? Guys, can we cut it out? Donald Trump is not an idiot. Donald Trump, let me just be very clear. Donald Trump is smarter than me, you, and all critics. You know why we know? Because he has the White House, the Senate, the House.
Totally agree.
Court, the popular vote. He has a massive media ecosystem bigger than the mainstream, built around him and for him, and a religious fervor in a political movement around him. And his best buddy is the richest person in the history of the world, and the most relevant Kennedy is with him. This dude is a phenomenon. He is the most powerful human on earth and in our lifetime, and we're still saying, well, how was this guy? We look like idiots to ordinary.
You're totally right.
I wish they had played that. Now, see, that would have been fun if they had played that at the DNC. Generally, Simo, what do you think would have happened if they had played that at the DNC? Would they have turned the tables over? Would there have been an insurrection?
Pretty much. That would have been glorious prior to the election, right? But give Van Jones credit.
I'll bet you Van Jones was not at the DNC donor dinner. I wish they had played that last night.
Wasn't that clip from Kamala just glorious?
It's just condensed, perfect Kamala. I got to play that for people. I got to play that for Geraghty next hour. All right, let me tell people about that's just it. Reflect upon, no matter how bad you've got it this week, how little you want to do with your office party, you didn't have to go to the Democratic National Committee holiday party last night. So you're better off than at least some people. You didn't have to do that. Bethany Mandel joins me. Her book, Stolen Youth, would make a great Christmas present for people. Good morning, Bethany. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you for that plug.
Well, stolen youth is, people right now are looking for things to get, and they're looking for books to get. And I think stolen youth would fit a lot of parents' gift list, don't you?
I do. I do. It's still so relevant. Every day I turn on the TV and I'm like, oh, yep, that I talked about that in our book.
All right. Now, Bethany, you and I often talk about news out of Israel, and the big news out of Israel is that the prime minister talked to the president-elect, and there are signs that maybe Hamas finally wants to get out alive. Are you an optimist this week after seeing those reports this weekend?
I am more than I have been. It doesn't. I don't want to say that I am an optimist, but I'm more optimistic than I've been probably in almost a year.
Okay, so what do you put that? Because I don't think Netanyahu would go out there and do a trial balloon unless something was close, right?
Yeah, I mean, what I'm hearing from every side is that they're hoping that a deal is done before the new year. And what that really means is they're hoping that a deal is done before they have to deal with the cowboy coming in on January 20th.
And the cowboy is going to send Israel every kind of weapon that it wants. So Hamas does have an incentive to giddy up and get out, right? That's what they could be offered. The ones who remain could be offered a trip to Tehran. Do you think they want that?
I mean, they're genocidal maniacs, and who knows what they want because they're subhuman. But one would think they would want to get out alive and not meet the same fate as Sinwar. But who knows? I mean, they're lunatics.
And they're Sunni, so they probably don't want to go to Tehran. Maybe they'll go to Turkey. We'll see. Second thing I want to ask you about, Dan Senor does a podcast, Call Me Back. He had on a new expert this week, a guy named Raz Zimmit, who is a specialist on Iran. And the proposition is that Iran is tottering. Do you believe that, Bethany Mandel?
I think that I do. I mean, first of all, I trust who Dan Senor trusts. He's brilliant, and his podcast has been indispensable over the course of the last 437 days. But none of the experts seemed to believe that Syria was on the verge of collapse. But every single one of these proxy states that Iran was propping up have fallen like a house of cards. So I don't see why Iran itself would be any different.
Why would Israel not strike Iran right now? They don't care what Blinken and Sullivan think, and they doubt that Joe Biden has a coherent thought. And they know that Donald Trump doesn't like foreign wars, but the pathway is open. Syria's air defenses are gone. Why wouldn't they do it?
Yeah, I mean that I think that we might be watching them take those steps right now. They've completely decimated Syria's capabilities, military capabilities. The explosions that we saw over the weekend were they looked shocking, and the nuclear like cloud that went up over Syria, you think, thank God that they didn't have those capabilities. A lot of people are criticizing Israel and saying, this new Syrian government, they didn't do anything. Why are you preemptively striking? Well, we know who they are. They are affiliated with ISIS. They're affiliated with Al Qaeda. We don't need a wait and see approach on these folks. Granted,
have we heard any American political figure criticize Israel's strikes on Syria? I'm unaware of anyone reaching that level of stupidity here. There's a UN guy from Norway who's out there complaining about Israel blowing up chemical weapons, but he's from the UN. That's his job, is to be stupid. But has any American been stupid?
Not really. I mean, I've been seeing criticisms from like the Mehdi Hassans of the world. I've been seeing a lot of criticisms from opponents of the Assad regime saying, it's the dawn of a new day. How dare Israel start out on this foot? I've seen criticisms from the Australians. I mean, the usual suspects internationally. But I think that a lot of Americans understand that, we did not replace a good guy here.
Yeah, and we do not want we don't want to roll the dice on weapons of mass destruction. By the way, weren't you under the impression that Barack Obama announced that the Russians were getting rid of all the chemical weapons in Syria?
I mean, I was also under the impression that there was a red line. There's lots of impressions that Barack Obama gave to us over the course of his presidency that turned out to be nonsense.
Okay, it's a quick exit question, Bethany. The Democratic National Committee had their holiday party last night. How awful of a gathering do you think that was?
It must have been pretty dour, honestly. It's good that you called it a holiday party and not a Christmas party. It was very respectful of you. Um, but I mean, what holiday is it, do you think?
I am going to play for Jim Geraghty. We don't have enough time, Bethany. I'm going to play the vice president's remarks. Honestly, it could have been like what they used to do in ancient Rome before anyone went into the bathroom and just got into the warm bath, because it was that bad. And so I hope you have a happy holiday. Do you have holiday celebrations this week? Is it Hanukkah this week or is it next week?
It's actually, weirdly enough, it falls on Christmas this year.
Bravo! I finally get the calendar right. Well then, happy Hanukkah to you. I will probably not talk to you next week. We will find out as we go. Bethany Mandel can be followed on X at Bethany Shondark, and you ought to do just that. It's a chilly 41 degrees this morning. Jim Geraghty probably has a muffler on. No, he doesn't have a muffler. You need a muffler, Jim. No. Jim, I want to talk to you about the Jets, drones, and Democrats. I want to start by thanking you. The Jets won yesterday. They are now drafting after the Browns in the Tankathon, so thank you. Someone had to win that game. I'm glad it was the Jets.
Yeah, I have to congratulate my friend Charlie Cook, diehard Jaguars fan. Back when the season looked better for both of us, this was actually a game I was thinking of going to watch with my dad in person. Season stinks, we didn't do it, but let me say, like, Charlie got the big win, and by that I mean the loss. But at this point of the year, when you're not going anywhere, you're not going to the playoffs, you want the best draft position you can. The other reason they won yesterday is, like, I watch almost every Jet game at a local restaurant or through illicit means. And I didn't watch yesterday. So naturally, that's when, Rodgers looks good and Devontae Adams looks incredible and all that stuff. They save all the highlights for when I'm not watching. So thanks a lot, guys.
You see, the reason I was pulling for him yesterday is I think the Jaguars have it in it to win one more game and go ahead of the Browns. But in the Tankathon world, we know who to root for. I'm rooting for the Bears tonight. Get them out of Tankathon competition. But Jim, last football question. I don't want to be number one or number two. I don't want Shador. I don't want Cam Ward. Do you?
I've never, look, as bad as the Jets have been, by winning a whopping 3 games this year, they were pretty much eliminated because the Raiders and Giants, man, when it comes to losing, they are the champions. They are winners.
They're the best at it. Yeah. I don't want those two anyway. They're running quarterbacks. I'm done with running quarterbacks. I want an Aaron Rodgers from 20 years ago. That's what I want.
So do we. So does Aaron Rodgers.
All right. Second question. That's the Jets. Drones. Earlier, I asked Vic Matus, you've got Jersey ties. What's going on? And he wouldn't tell me. I assume this is a New Jersey thing. What's going on?
All right, so today's Morning Jolt is very long, clocked in at right around 3,000 words, but I just decided to look at everything we could determine about the drone incidents. Most notably, there are 4 possibilities. One is these are our drones, and we don't want to talk about it because we're testing them. And there are certain sightings that lines up with drones that the Navy has described. There is the Naval Air Warfare Center, in kind of south central New Jersey. That's a possibility. I don't think it counts. By the way, I think there's multiple explanations for multiple sightings. Second one is the idea that it's somebody else's drones, and it's very easy to talk yourself into that. We're in between presidencies. We have a whole bunch of enemies who probably, Russia wants to probably maximize its leverage for any negotiations over Ukraine. Iran's had a really rough year. You figure they might want to send some sort of signal or something like that. The argument was Jeff Van Drew's statement that there are 3 drone. Iran has drone carriers, basically a drone aircraft carrier, but they're all off the coast of Iran right now. So apparently, the idea that there's one somewhere in the Atlantic sending out these drones doesn't line up with what would seem very plausible there. That said, the military is saying we have these drone incursions over our bases, over our restricted airspace, and we don't know what they are. So conceivably, this is not a lot. Some of them are probably natural phenomenon. Somebody said you look at the flight paths for LaGuardia, JFK, Newark, and they line up with where a lot of these sightings are occurring. So it's probably a combination of those 3. And if it is aliens, like I say, this is a guy who grew up in Metuchen. Hugh, why would they come to New Jersey?
I just think you're obviously adding to the conspiracy of silence.
All right.
You are obviously adding to the conspiracy of silence among New Jerseyites, and you're all in on it, and you're not telling us. So I'm done with that. Let me move on to the Democratic holiday party. Were you aware that the Democrats had a Christmas party last night?
I figured it. Well, first of all, it was a holiday party, right? It wasn't a Christmas party, Hugh.
It was a holiday party. Yes.
Yeah. I had not heard about it until we started talking with Dwayne logging in. But every day I log. First of all, congratulations on your shift to the afternoons. I'm figuring sleeping late will be good for you. You will. So I figure after starting my week with you, maybe we'll do some Friday afternoon talk, and I'll end my week with you. But I always think I'm prepared for this show. And
all right,
you always
now
have
here
something
is
happen.
here is Kamala Harris giving you just a French kiss bit of her to take with your back to California. Cut number 20, please.
Our spirit is not defeated. We are not defeated. Let's be clear about that. We are strong. We are clear about why we are in this. And because you're here right now, I say, again, thank you, because not only are you clear about all of that, you're willing to put in the hard work. And that work must continue. We cannot let any circumstance or situation or individual ever take away our power to know why we do what we do and our ability to then get that work done. And especially because we know what we stand for, and that's why we know what to fight for. We here believe in the promise of America.
Thank you, General Pickett. What did you make of that, Jim Geraghty?
Hugh, did I hear her correctly that we're not going to let any individual take away our power?
Yes, you did.
The sitting vice president said she's not going to let any individual. That sounds kind of insurrection-y, doesn't it? Isn't this kind of resisting the legitimate transfer of power? Yeah.
I actually just think it's a condensed look to why she lost after spending $1.5 billion and not closely. Well, it's why she lost every county. Every county in America was more Republican than Democrat than 4 years ago. And that is why, right there.
There's that. I realized she could not go out and do The Simpsons. Kids, you tried and you failed. And the lesson from this is don't try. But I figure there's some, like the subtext of this, in an important way, we are not defeated. But in an even more important way, we really were defeated. And that's the lesson we should take. Look, I realize it's a really tough job to go out there and say Democrats. So I lost every swing state, as you mentioned. Every county was more Republican than it was 4 years ago. There was not we lost the Senate. We were close in the House, but we lost that. We lost, the governorships didn't change, but we lost the more state legislative seats. It was a top to bottom defeat. There is no silver lining. We have no power in Washington for at least the next 2 years. And honestly, the midterms aren't looking great. We'll see what happens down the road. But the entirety of our approach has been rebuked. We've lost among every demographic, minority groups, you name it. But we will fight on. Because the important thing is, the lesson of Kamala Harris's life is that when you fail, just try the same thing again. And then hopefully it'll work out.
Now, if you were programming the DNC's holiday gathering, if you'd been at all imaginative, wouldn't you have booked the comic Tony from the Madison Square Garden? Wouldn't that have been fun?
Whoa. Well, no. So there was a good essay in the Atlantic who basically said, we're in a populist era. Democrats have to become more populist. As a result, they have to be less cultural elitist, and they have to focus on raising the minimum wage and trade, blah, 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 anti-free trade, more protectionist. And the thing, first of all, is it's not like they totally ignored these issues. It's not like you could say, but the takeaway I took from this essay is have you met any of these top Democrats? Do you know the people who work at the DNC?
Yeah, my real question is, if you're the party planner, who do you book? They had the president who rambled on. I played those clips. They had the vice president. Who do you actually send up there? It's the worst Christmas party in history, right?
Fetterman, so he could yell at them that they stink.
Yes.
And say, why can't you be more like me? All of you are getting cargo pants. All of you are, T-shirts and, but semi-seriously, my reaction to that essay was all he was saying is that, elite Democrat party leaders need to change. Is everything about themselves. And they like themselves the way they are. They don't want to start saying it's okay to drive an SUV or a pickup truck and you don't need to drive a non-Elon Musk manufactured electric vehicle. They don't want to, like, they ran on abortion on demand because that's what matters most to them. They don't want to change,
Jim,
like
I'm going to get you to go out on a limb early here because in 1968, Republicans won a fractured, violence-filled upheaval of an election when Richard Nixon beat Hubert Humphrey, and they came back 4 years later with George McGovern. So, who are the Democrats going to nominate in 2028 based on that predicate?
The only thing I like about that predicate, Hugh, is that you know what happened right after 1968? The Jets won the Super Bowl. So,
there you go. But if they're going to find the George McGovern of 2028, who is the George McGovern of? I think I know who it is.
Newsom or
no? It's AOC. They are really going to go full AOC. She's bored in the House. She's in the minority. She can raise the money. It's going to be 100% AOC. Are you a skeptic?
Yeah, but I think there's going to be you can see the reaction to Brian Thompson. There's just this in-choke rage amongst liberals right now.
It's going to turn into a draft AOC movement soon. Jim Geraghty, follow him on X at Jim Geraghty. Read him in National Review, The Morning Jolt. Read him in the Washington Post. Don't miss tomorrow. Kevin Roberts is going to join me. His brand new book, A Dawn's Early Light, is not from the Heritage Foundation, even though Kevin Roberts is the president of the Heritage Foundation, and the Heritage Foundation is a sponsor of my program. It's Kevin Roberts' view of the world, and it's fascinating, and I am looking forward to talking to him. I've known Kevin since he got to town 3 years ago, and he is a very, very much an engine in the conservative movement that is absolutely informed, always fun, always on point, great communicator. Dawn's Early Light is a great book, and you ought to head over to Amazon.com right now and get Dawn's Early Light. Because if you've got someone in your life who's interested in politics and they want an orientation, they want a vision, they want a worldview, and they don't know how to get there, the first step is to read a few of them by people who've been around and have thought it through. And one of those is Kevin Roberts' Dawn's Early Light. I'll be talking to Dr. Roberts tomorrow. Don't miss that. Also, don't miss your chance to go to the inauguration. Salem Media is giving away 2 tickets to the inauguration, as well as 2 tickets to an inaugural ball, as well as cost of flying you from wherever you are to D.C. and your stay in D.C. You have to text the word Trump to 94878. That's Trump, 94878. Now, let me talk to you about Angel Tree for a moment. They are a sponsor of my show. We have a week left, and thousands of children to take care of. I mean, we're doing great. And thank you. Many of you stepped up and have sent me $30, $60, $90 increments of $30. Some of you have done $150, and many of you have done $300. You say, okay, I'll take care of 10 children. And thank you. Their parents are in jail. Mom and or dad are behind bars. But mom and or dad works with Angel Tree, which is a Ministry of Prison Fellowship, to get the letter from Santa, find out what it is that the child wants, whether it's a football or a Barbie doll or a set of cards. I don't know what they want. I don't know what small children want anymore. I don't do this anymore. But I know that children look forward to Christmas morning, and when they get a note from mom or dad who's not there because they're in jail, those children just have a much better Christmas. Please help them out by helping out Angel Tree. Many of you already done so on the patio of your local church, and I appreciate that. But if you don't have a local church or they don't work with Prison Fellowship and Angel Tree, please understand it's completely tax deductible. Give through the banner at the top of HughHewitt.com. Change a child's Christmas. And thousands of you have stepped up. Thank you. We need thousands more. Thousands more. We really do want to have thousands more. I want to do a couple of political notes. Number one, it is the week of the CR negotiations. It is a big week in Washington, D.C. The big four get together, the four corners. That is McConnell and Schumer, Johnson and Hakeem Jeffries, backed up by their 4 number 2s. I don't know who that is in the House, but I think it's Dick Durbin for the Democrats in the Senate. It's John Thune for the Republicans. He's the majority leader select. And it is Steve Scalise. and they have to decide what, if anything, goes into the four corners of the CR. I have things I want in. I want the AM radio in every vehicle act to be a part of it because that's got 100% bipartisan support. It's not a jam down on everyone. Everyone, I mean, there might be 5 people on both the far left and the far right who don't want the emergency broadcast system to endure, but I do. So I think there ought to be an AM radio in every vehicle. I'm a big sponsor, believer in this act. So I want them to put that in. But there are a lot of people who want things in that I don't want in. Big Pharma always lurks. Big Pharma makes big tech look like pikers. They've been at it longer. Big Pharma got exactly what they needed out of Obamacare, even though you and I didn't. Big Pharma gets whatever they need every year because they're very good at this. They hire the best people. And the best people know everyone they've hired every former congressman and senator from both parties. Work for Beth. If they're in the lobbying business, many people don't get into that. Our friend John Campbell, who will be back as a regular guest now that we moved to the afternoon and he can wake up. John Campbell doesn't fall for it, but go over to pharmawindfall.com and stop it. pharmawindfall.com. Our sponsor is conservatives4lowerhealthcare.com. Head over to pharmawindfall.com. You may be asking yourself, how much damage can Team Biden do on their way out the door? And I was wondering that myself. There is something called the Congressional Review Act, so that regulations adopted at the last minute can be repealed if they get enough people to do it. But I also thought I would turn to a state litigator, in this case, Elliot Geiser, who's the Solicitor General of the great state of Ohio. Good morning, Elliot Geiser. I said that the wrong way. It is great to talk to you. Where do I find you this morning? You in Columbus?
That's right, Hugh, and it's great to be with you from Columbus, Ohio, in the beautiful state of Ohio.
Even though our Browns lost yesterday, you are a Cleveland guy. Am I correct about that? You went to The Ohio State University before the University of Chicago, and you're a Hillsdale man, right?
That is true. Honored to be a Hillsdale man. Yeah, our Browns lost. I guess the silver lining is maybe that helps us get a better draft pick next time. But
in fact, we moved up to number 7. Where'd you go to high school in Cleveland?
Yeah, so I was actually homeschooled all the way through. My family, this was back in the 90s before the school choice movement had really taken off, and we didn't have a lot of means, so my mom taught me and my 2 younger siblings everything from math and science, and my dad was a small business owner, and we were in Cleveland proper because my grandpa lived down the street from us. He had worked for Ford for 33 years. That's why we lived 8 blocks away. Could walk down to his house. It was a great way to grow up, and the thing that I get to do now with Attorney General Yost is defend that way of life against all of those onslaughts from Washington.
Now I want to talk to you about Ohio versus EPA, which was decided in June of last year. But before I do that, I just have to say I'm not easily impressed by a resume, but where I see University of Chicago Law School, then you clerk for Judge Rao, then you clerk for Justice Alito, then you work for Boyden, who I knew back in the old days of the Reagan years, then you have been teaching at Ohio State, and you're the Solicitor General of Ohio. Holy smokes, slow down, Elliot. This is amazing. Are you never not working?
Well, I've been accused of being a young man in a hurry before by Dr. Arnn at Hillsdale and others. But, the country that we've been given is too great a thing not to give it your absolute effort. And, yeah, you mentioned some of the great mentors that I've had, like Judge Jones, Judge Rao, Justice Alito, and former White House counsel Boyden Gray. It's one of those things where if you do your best in this country, you can still go pretty far.
Yeah, I didn't even mention Judge Jones, and she may be mad at me. Usually Judge Jones is a listener to the program, The Great Fifth Circuit Lion. Sometimes I lie awake at night thinking, Souter Jones, and he picked the wrong door. George H.W. Bush did. Tell me something, Elliot. I really wanted to ask you about U.S. versus EPA, or Ohio versus EPA, and what you are worried about right now. Are you keeping track of what the federal government is doing to the states in this sprint of the left to the exits?
Absolutely. So under Attorney General Yost, Ohio is currently, right now today, party to 44 cases against the federal government, where Ohio is either leading a state coalition or we are defending with another state that is in the lead. You mentioned Ohio versus EPA. One of my deputies argued that case past February. Justice Gorsuch, in a 5-4 decision, very narrow, stayed that rule, which would have imposed onerous and really ruinous regulations on Ohio's energy grid, made it impossible for us to have guaranteed, reliable, affordable energy. And what I'm worried about right now is that people will take their eye off the ball. So we're watching carefully. We have a petition at the U.S. Supreme Court for continued review in that case about the fact that as soon as the D.C. Circuit got the case back after the stay order from the Supreme Court, that was an interim order, the EPA asked for a do-over. Now, the Clean Air Act doesn't allow a do-over, but that's what the EPA is trying to do. They're saying, oh, if we just explained better why we impose billions of dollars of costs on ratepayers, on taxpayers, and on energy industry, then it will be fine, even though the Supreme Court has already concluded that likely Ohio is going to succeed in our argument that this was not a lawful regulation. And you can go down the line. I mean, Ohio is leading a state coalition protecting students against compelled speech from compelled pronoun policies, which is a flagrant violation of the First Amendment. But lots of schools across the country believe that because the Biden administration has said Title IX requires, people to treat people who are biologically boys as if they're girls on their say-so, that entitles them to transgress these fundamental Bill of Rights boundaries to protect individual liberties. And so that's why the Ohio Attorney General's office is standing in the gap for them.
So, General, tell me why you decided to do this job. Because with your resume, you can work anywhere you want and do anything that you want to do and get in line to become a federal judge. Dave Yost is my favorite attorney general, and you're working for a great guy, and you have 44 cases. But why would you do this? Because you could be banking a lot of dough right now.
Well, you're right. 2 reasons for that. Attorney General Yost is the first one. When I first met the Attorney General, our conversation turned very quickly from Supreme Court precedent to C.S. Lewis and the great books, and I realized that I could have in him a really wonderful mentor in the life of Ohio and the life of the law. And secondly, it's always been my dream to be able to represent the people of my state, to be able to stand up and argue on their behalf in the courts of appeals. The Ohio Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court is truly a dream come true. The people of Ohio in the last election, I think, made resoundingly clear that they don't want complacency anymore, and that they haven't given up on the possibilities of our future, that our country is still radiant with opportunity. And that's what I think President-elect Trump and our great junior senator, now Vice President-elect J.D. Vance recognize, that the American people aren't done yet, that the people who crossed oceans and prairies deserve that kind of zealous representation of their interests on the world stage and domestically.
I'm talking with the Solicitor General of Ohio, Elliot Geiser. Elliot, how did you decide to go from The Ohio State University, where you began your university education, to Hillsdale? This has got nothing to do with watching the federal bureaucracy, but I'm just curious.
Well, that was actually a really tough decision. I started at Ohio State in law school, and I had resisted going to law school. Everybody I knew, everyone who cared about me, told me that the high school speech and debate homeschool kid was probably destined for a life in the law, but I took some time off. I worked for my dad's business. I got to work at the Heritage Foundation in D.C., and really I thought I wanted to get back to Ohio, and Ohio State has the flagship law school here, and I've always been a Buckeyes fan, and so that was a really great perk. But I also had some professors at Ohio State after they looked at my goals and my grades, and they said, Elliot, you have the ability to serve your state perhaps even better if you took a leap of faith. And so when you transfer in law school, you sort of zero out your GPA, and as you know, Hugh, the first year of law school is kind of a form of trauma bonding. Yes. If you've seen the cold call experience, you build sort of a band of brothers with your 1L classmates, your first year classmates. But Hillsdale's motto I'll say a Latin phrase, virtus tentamine gaudet. It means strength rejoices in the challenge. And I thought the challenge of transferring to the University of Chicago was one I couldn't really pass up. And that I vowed I'd come back to Ohio. And I'm grateful that in the wisdom of Providence, I've been able to find my way back and into the role working here for the Attorney General as the Solicitor General.
Well, this is so fabulous. I actually sent a note to Larry Arnn. I said, I'm going to be talking to the Solicitor General of Ohio about protecting us from the outgoing Biden-Harris team. And he said good things about you, so that might surprise you. But from Hillsdale to Ohio State Law School, it's an amazing resume. It's an amazing journey. I am just curious whether or not you think Biden and Harris are up to no good in the last month.
Well, yeah, I think that they are. I think if you look at the foreign policy stage, there are all kinds of things that are happening that seem like they might be binding the future administration or trying to do that. You mentioned the Congressional Review Act. That has a 180-day look-back period. And so I can tell you that March and April of this past year and early May, it felt like the Biden administration just backed up a garbage truck and dumped regulations out within days of that look-back window. Right now, I think on the domestic front, the things I would be concerned about are litigation strategies that make it more challenging for the incoming administration to represent the will of the people in how they want to continue to enforce the law. You see, the executive branch, any regulation or rule that they adopt, that's enforcement. It's Congress that ultimately makes the laws. And the question that I am always asking in federal court is, what's the fit between what the executive branch is doing and what the laws by the people's representatives actually say? And right now, I think that fit is quite poor. If you look at, for example, the SEC climate disclosure rule, where Ohio led a petition for review in the Sixth Circuit, that would have required every single publicly traded company to disclose immaterial information in excess of the statutory mandate for the SEC, which wasn't to play JV EPA and regulate the climate. It was to ensure that our financial markets are stable and can maximize returns for your and my retirements. And so we're watching.
General Geyser, here's the key question. And we might go into the break about this, and I'll put it on YouTube. How do you keep track? Justice Gorsuch just wrote the book Overruled. We don't even know how many federal agencies we have. How does a state keep track of the rules and regulations impacting its state so you don't miss a window of standing opportunity?
I think that's a good question. I'm on the Federal Register website constantly, and I also work with my fellow states to track issue areas. So one of the things that a Solicitor General can do is sort of be an ambassador in these state coalitions. A lot of states have similar interests, and we do our best to keep our ear to the ground. So you can sort of look at it, what the public can see, but we also talk to people in Washington, talk to our representatives in Congress about what we think is coming down, and talk to those people who are going to bear the brunt of the regulations, the people in our states who are concerned about regulations on energy, on schools, on our retirements.
Solicitor General Geyser represents the Buckeye State, and I wanted to talk to someone about manning the ramparts during the period of time when everyone kind of has a Christmas truce. So, General, how are you doing that specific thing? The last minute, push it out the door nonsense. If you've got 44 cases going right now, you probably will be at 54 by January 21st. How do you watch for that? Is it just the Federal Register?
It's not just the Federal Register. Yeah, I mean, like I said, we talk to people who are the regulated parties themselves about what's coming on. And then, for the environmental regulations, the Clean Air Act actually imposes obligations on the states. So Ohio's Environmental Protection Agency is in regular collaboration with the EPA, and they sort of, can call us up and say, hey, Attorney General's office, something's coming down that's really going to be difficult for us to enforce. It's going to be really onerous on our industry. An example of that is the methane rule, which, Ohio has hundreds of methane wells. We have great Marcellus shale natural gas, and that rule basically just says, even if it's a small non-producing well, the state is obligated to expend its resources to cap those wells and capture that absolute little marginal amount, even though we don't even have the resources to do that. So we're watching, we're on the ramparts, Nehemiah at the wall, building with one hand and holding a sword or a spear in the other for litigation if necessary.
Okay, last question. The Sixth Circuit. Is there a better circuit to argue in front of than the Sixth Circuit right now?
I think the Sixth Circuit, it has one amazing advantage that puts it head and shoulders over all the other ones, in that it is the most Supreme Court reversal proof. If Chief Judge Sutton, who was Ohio's second Solicitor General, so I get to stand in the shoes of a giant in that respect, if he writes an opinion, I think it is in the best possible posture for the middle justices on the Supreme Court to say this is reasonable, this is an excellent application of the law. And then there are many other wonderful judges, Judges Nalbandian and Larson and Thapar, who are real luminaries and lights. Radler and Murphy, who is also a Solicitor General. Actually,
you argued before Judge Thapar? General, have you had to go before Judge Thapar?
I've argued in front of him twice,
that's got to be a legal obstacle course. What is that argument like?
He is incredibly intelligent, but the two cases that I argued in front of him were en banc. That was the full Sixth Circuit. And actually, I want him to be on every panel that I can get because he can pick up what I'm laying down and persuade his colleagues. One of the best cases, we recently had the foreign money and election ban, where Ohio protected our constitutional initiative process from foreign entanglements. And Judge Thapar wrote an amazing opinion staying the preliminary injunction that had been entered against us. So a lower court had ruled against us, and Judge Thapar said that that survives strict scrutiny because of the compelling interest the state has in protecting its process and protecting democratic self-government by citizens of the state of Ohio from people overseas who want to control what our fundamental charter says about our rights and liberties.
I'm not easily impressed. And so when I heard about Elliot Geiser, I said it can't be the case because he clerked for Judge Jones on the Fifth Circuit. He clerked for Judge Rao on the D.C. Circuit. He clerked for Justice Alito on the Supreme Court. He's Ohio Solicitor General. I heard about him because of Larry Arnn. Dr. Arnn's very proud of his Hillsdale College graduates who go on to clerk on the Supreme Court. But we were talking during the break, and I want to go back to this. Measure 1 in Ohio in this past election was defeated. It was an attempt to gerrymander the gerrymander, and it was funded from overseas. Is that what the lawsuit is that you were just talking to me about, General?
Yes. Governor DeWine signed this past August as part of the compromise that would have allowed the Democrats to hold their convention late, a ban on foreign influence in Ohio's initiative elections. We have a broad ability to amend our Constitution, but we want the Ohio Constitution to be amended by Ohioans. That's democratic self-government. Well, a constellation of left-wing groups, George Soros extremists, sued to argue that that ban on foreign money in our elections violated the First Amendment. It's been my privilege to defend that case, and we won a stay from the Sixth Circuit of the injunction the lower court entered against us. So the lower court said, oh, this does violate the First Amendment. The Sixth Circuit said it likely does not because Ohio's compelling interest, I mean, going back to George Washington, the founders were very concerned about foreign entanglements and foreign interference with our ability to govern ourselves. And so it's just common sense that you wouldn't want Swiss billionaires or overseas groups dictating to us what our laws are, especially laws about, for example, how we are represented in our General Assembly or in Congress. And that issue went down. I think part of the reason it went down is because we banned foreign influence in our money, in our elections.
You know, when I interviewed your boss, General Yost, I was in Ohio with Americans for Prosperity before the election. And we talked with Bernie Moreno, we talked with Dave Yost, we talked about this and the fact that it was believed widely that foreign money was coming into Ohio to try and pass Measure 1. I did not know you had had a challenge and that you got to stay from the Sixth Circuit. Did that get appealed by the dark money groups? They don't want to take that anywhere near the Supreme Court, do they?
They didn't take the stay to the Supreme Court. We're currently undergoing cross-appellant briefing on the preliminary injunction itself in the Sixth Circuit. So we just filed our first brief in that a couple of weeks ago, making the simple common sense point that Ohioans need to believe in our process and believe that our process has the integrity to which they are entitled. Everyone should believe that they're governed by Ohio citizens in Ohio and not by billionaires overseas. And
I have
think
now
that,
found my
Attorney General
expert. I have now found my expert on this, and I thank you for that, because people don't understand how the dark money machine. The folks at the Ruthless podcast talked a little bit about Speaker Johnson's worry that Act Blue was accepting foreign gift cards, and we'll get more of that. But now I found my expert in the Solicitor General of the great state of Ohio. Elliot Geiser, thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to tell Dr. Arnn you got through the first Hugh Hewitt show without a pratfall. When you were at Gibson Dunn, by the way, what kind of a lawyer were you?
I was an antitrust and an appellate lawyer. I worked with Gene Scalia and a number of other really great litigators there on antitrust issues, and then also challenging the administrative state from private practice.
Yeah, I was a Gibson, Dunn and Crutcher summer associate 10,000 years ago before clerking on the D.C. Circuit, so it's like I'm talking to a young version of myself. Thank you so much, Elliot, for joining me, and congratulations in winning against the EPA, and I hope you continue to win for the state of Ohio. I appreciate your time, and I look forward to having you back on the Hugh Hewitt Show. That's remarkable. Thank you, Elliot Geiser. I want to make sure you folks here, Americans for Prosperity is a sponsor of my show, and they tell us every day that this stuff is going on, and I never quite believe them, how bad it can get. But indeed, it does get very bad indeed when foreign money floods into the United States in the attempt to push stuff down our throats. And the Swiss billionaire guy, who is believed to be behind a lot of the Measure 1 money and a lot of the Arabella Associates money, I'm just astonished, and I am very grateful that Americans for Prosperity is on the ramparts. Head over to AmericansForProsperity.org. Join it. I was in Ohio when I heard about Measure 1 from Dave Yost, Elliot Boss, the Attorney General of Ohio, and I couldn't believe it. And then I heard from the Secretary of State, Frank LaRosa, about Measure 1, and Measure 1 was defeated. People do not want foreign money in our elections. I'm a complete First Amendment absolutist. If you want to spend money on anything, there's no limit that can be put on it. It's speech, but not foreign money. We didn't want Russian interference in 2016. There wasn't any. And there was some, but it was not consequential material or directed by Donald Trump. Russia was nonsense. But we do not want this guy in Switzerland deciding how we're going to draw congressional lines in Ohio. So I am all for that, and I am grateful to Americans for Prosperity for putting on that event for Bernie Moreno, that I was able to learn about Measure 1. I hope I help push the defeat of that. I'm very, very grateful to AmericansForProsperity.org for doing that kind of work. Hey, there's a lot over at Hugh Hewitt on YouTube. Go and sign up. You will not get a Dwayne's World until Wednesday, I believe, but you can get Highly Concentrated Hugh every day. Everything we put at YouTube and the entire show as well over at the YouTube channel.